General Manager Rick Hahn spoke to the media at the ongoing winter meetings in San Diego recently. He used big words, said a lot of things without saying or committing to anything, and left Sox fans confused. It sounds like the White Sox are waiting for the rest of the league to get their affairs in order before they address their own needs. Could Liam Hendriks or even Tim Anderson be on the move this offseason? Yes and no.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Sox fans, welcome to Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all platforms. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On Sox. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search Locked On White Sox. Hey, I'm your host, Nick Morawski, a lifelong diehard Chicago White Sox fan, recording this podcast just blocks from the ballpark in beautiful Bridgeport. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTB. Really appreciate you letting me steal some of your time to talk off-season White Sox. Locked On White Sox is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. December 7th, 2016, the Chicago White Sox continued to tear things down. While it's assumed the White Sox are still in their competitive window, could All-Stars Liam Hendriks and Tim Anderson be traded? Rick Hahn talked once again about operating via the trade market, but it was how he said it that created confusion. The winter meetings continuing in San Diego. And really, folks, it's meet the new year, same as the old year as a Sox fan. Last year at this time, we watched as teams from all over the league were making moves as the lockout approached. Aside from adding more bullpen depth with Kendall Graveman and bringing back the legend, Lurie Garcia, the White Sox sat on their hands, waiting for a trade market to present itself. When nothing came of it, Rick Hahn essentially said that the trade market did not materialize like they thought it would. Sox were left to pick up scraps to try and solve their problems. Well, here we go again. Rick Hahn and the front office seem to be waiting for a market to materialize, a market that is, of course, to their liking, a market that might not even present itself. Instead of piggybacking on their proactive Clevenger deal, the White Sox seem to be content to be reactive. It's a dangerous approach. Monday night, Rick Hahn spoke from the winter meetings in San Diego. Hahn said the Sox have had a lot of conversations and reiterated that they are more likely to add via trade than free agency. And this is what Hahn said. I don't know if that's going to be here at the winter meetings. Certainly know we've had some productive conversations, and whether they bear fruit in the next 48 hours or next few weeks remains to be seen. The Sox are open-minded on everything in terms of moves, Hahn said. A year ago, we're coming off a division championship, he said, widely prognosticated to win the division going away. So a blockbuster, earth-shaking roster move was probably a little less on the agenda. This year, we have to be open-minded given the way we performed in 2022. Does that mean it's going to happen? Not necessarily. But we have to be open-minded to something like that. The Sox seem to be waiting for that smoke to clear. We are not driving that bus, Rick Hahn said, in terms of the mega free agent deal. I think some of those are probably going to have to come together in the coming days to lead to a little more activity in the other markets. A little movement in the shortstop market, obviously not the one we're currently in, but perhaps that has some impact on some of the other clubs that we're talking about in terms of pivoting towards some trades, said Hahn, acknowledging that it could take the form of a team signing a marquee shortstop and making an infielder available as a result, or something more indirect. Could that be they miss on someone? Hahn said, could be they reallocate resources to a different spot because they either did or did not sign a free agent. My point is simply a lot of times trade talks are dependent on what happens in free agency. It's not just isolated markets. Thus far, the 24 hours we've been here, you've seen more movement on the free agent side of the ledger. That's not too surprising. I suspect the next few days will mimic that. And James Fegan of The Athletic, he had this to say in a recent article he wrote: necessity, at least within the budget restrictions, is what's driving the White Sox to the sidelines of free agency, waiting to swing deals amid the fallout. For a team that's looking to return to the playoffs as soon as possible, the easiest and most appealing way to do so is by moving prospects from an improving but still relatively shallow farm system. Quote, we'd be open to it, Hahn said. There's a few guys who are on the precipice of contributing in 2023, and there's others in there toward the top of our list who are a little further away in terms of how much we value because of the way they slate into future rosters. But again, it's a matter of being open-minded, and we know where we sit in terms of the 2023 team, in terms of competitiveness, a competitive cycle, what our goals are. In terms of the mega free agent deal, Hahn said, I think that, again, some of those probably going to have to come together in the coming days to lead to a little more activity in the other markets. We're not driving that bus exactly. We have all sorts of ideas floating around, Hahn said. Some of that we volunteer to other clubs, and some of that come through the door from someone else's brainchild. When the right deal comes along, that's when we're going to move. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be these next couple of days. Wow. A lot from Rick Hahn there. So I guess because the White Sox were supposed to be better in 2022 and not only make the playoffs, but advance, because of the predictions made by MLB prognosticators, Rick Hahn and the front office had decided that they don't need to do as much this offseason. Hope for players to return to accustomed levels, jump on whatever leftovers are around after the holidays, and watch teams that were successful last year continue to get better. Wow. Truly, sit back, relax, and strap it down, White Sox fans. The Sox seem to be confused with their identity right now, and the last thing you want to be is mired in mediocrity. I'm going to tell you why the White Sox might be interested in trading from their core. More on that in a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by Simply Safe. At Locked On White Sox, we believe home should be where you and your family feel safest, especially over the holidays. This season, give yourself and your family the gift of peace and protection with the #1 rated home security system, Simply Safe. And right now, Simply Safe is offering Locked On White Sox listeners 40% off a new security system. Don't put this off. In an emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents use Fast Protect technology exclusively from Simply Safe to capture critical evidence and verify the threat is real, so you can get higher priority police response. Simply Safe is whole home security with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door, HD security cameras for inside and out, smarter ways to detect motion that alert you when a threat is real, and even hazard sensors that detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. 24/7 professional monitoring service costs under $1 a day, less than half the price of traditional home security systems. With the top-rated Simply Safe app, stay in complete control of your system, arm or disarm, unlock for a guest, access your cameras, or adjust system settings anytime, anywhere. Don't miss your chance to save big on this award-winning security system. Get 40% off any new system at simplysafe.com/lockedonMLB today. That's simplysafe.com/lockedonMLB. There's no safe like Simply Safe. So could Liam Hendriks or Tim Anderson be on the move this offseason? It is really complicated. In terms of Liam Hendriks, this is from MLB Trade Rumors, an article by Anthony Franco. The White Sox have discussed star closer Liam Hendriks in talks with other teams this winter, reports Mark Feinsand of MLB.com. There's no indication a deal is especially likely, although it stands to reason a number of clubs would have interest in installing the three-time All-Star into their late inning mix if Chicago's amenable to make a trade. Feinsand notes Hendriks' contract contains a limited no-trade provision that allows him to block a move to 5 unknown teams. Hendriks just wrapped a 4th consecutive excellent season, a journeyman depth arm. For the first 8 seasons of his MLB career, he broke out with a 1.80 ERA in 85 stellar innings for the A's in 2019. The Australian earned his first All-Star selection that year, and he performed a similarly excellent level during the abbreviated 2020 campaign. His final 2 seasons in Oakland saw him put up a 1.79 ERA while holding opponents to a 192, 240, 289 slash line through 99 games. Over the 2020-2021 offseason, the White Sox signed Hendriks to a $54 million free agent contract. It was technically a 3-year guarantee, with Hendriks making $12 million in 2021, $13 million in 2022, and a $14 million contract for 2023. The 2024 campaign is technically covered by a club option, but both the option price and the buyout are valued at $15 million. That highlights the potential for Hendriks to be a key player on the offseason trade market, but that he'd require the White Sox showing an openness to moving him. That his name has surfaced in trade discussions is far from an indication the White Sox are actively shopping him, as it's possible general manager Rick Hahn and his group are simply taking calls from interested clubs out of due diligence. And in terms of Tim Anderson, the Chicago White Sox reportedly have no plans of trading shortstop Tim Anderson this offseason. Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic reported the White Sox plan to keep Anderson as they maintain a short-term focus on success. Anderson is under team control through 2024 and is owed just $26.5 million for the remainder of his contract. So there's understandably no urgency to make a move. It's unclear if Anderson will remain in Chicago beyond his current contract, with Colson Montgomery rising up the minor league ranks, but the 2021 first-round pick is not ready to make his MLB debut. Retaining Anderson for the 2023 season and then revisiting his status heading into 2024 makes a ton more sense, particularly given the front office desire to make the playoffs. So Liam Hendriks, of course, is a huge trade chip. He can command a lot, but what direction are the White Sox going in? Do they truly believe they are still in that competitive window, that World Series competitive window? And I don't know if I believe that Tim Anderson is untouchable. What if some of these teams looking for a shortstop miss out and approach the White Sox about Tim Anderson? Do you really think the Sox are going to re-sign Tim Anderson? Maybe they wait another year, though. Like I talked about in the previous episode regarding the whole teardown that started with the Chris Sale trade, the White Sox did not want to be in the middle anymore. But sadly, that's where they kind of are right now. They have the talent to compete in the AL Central, but nowhere near enough to make a serious run at the World Series. So it sounds like they will sit and wait as other teams go about their business. Then when the top tier free agents are gone and other major targets are off the board, folks might come calling for what the White Sox have to offer. The Chris Sale trade set the tone, and the following day provided even more intrigue. I'm going to tell you how the rebuild continued to take shape. More on that in a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer and esports. We've got it all at BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. December 7th, 2016, 6 years ago, White Sox traded outfielder Adam Eaton to the Washington Nationals for Lucas Giolito, Ronaldo Lopez, and Dane Dunning. Lucas Giolito has been in the starting rotation full-time since 2018. Ronaldo Lopez has done just about everything from a pitching standpoint since first appearing with the White Sox in 2017. And look, if Liam Hendriks is traded, I can see Ronaldo Lopez as the new closer for the White Sox in 2023. And of course, Dane Dunning was flipped for Lance Lynn a few years ago. Like Boston, the Washington Nationals got their World Series ring, but the White Sox are still waiting to win a playoff series. Folks, thank you so very much for making this podcast part of your daily routine. You can find the Locked On White Sox podcast absolutely everywhere you find your podcasts. We are on Twitter at Locked On Sox. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTB. And don't forget, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search Locked On White Sox. Thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. The biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Coming up on the next episode, I will continue to take a look at the offseason scenarios for the Chicago White Sox as the Pedro Grifol era moves full steam ahead and the winter meetings wrap up. I really appreciate you making time for the Locked On White Sox podcast. I'm Nick Morawski, and until next time, go Sox.